The Rover P6 looked sensible, almost conservative, as if it belonged outside a doctor's surgery on a rainy British afternoon. But under that calm exterior, Rover was quietly building one of the cleverest saloons of the 1960s. This was a car with turbine-era thinking, racing-style suspension, and safety ideas long before they became fashionable. Subscribe if you love classic car documentary. Today, we're uncovering the hidden details that made the P6 far stranger than it first appeared. The front suspension, designed for a jet engine. One of the most distinctive features of the Rover P6 sat where few owners would ever think to look. Its front suspension used horizontally mounted springs and a compact bell crank layout unlike most cars of its era, which relied on more conventional upright springs. That strange arrangement was not just an engineer showing off. Rover originally wanted extra room under the bonnet because the company was still thinking seriously about turbine power, a futuristic dream that hovered over the project in the early 1960s. In simple terms, the suspension was pushed out of the way so something extraordinary might one day fit in its place. The practical benefit was a low bonnet line, tidy packaging, and a refined ride. Even though the turbine never arrived, the idea gave the P6 a wonderfully eccentric sense of ambition. The saloon, built like a secret safety cell. At first glance, the Rover P6 looked like a neat British saloon with crisp lines and polite manners. Underneath, however, it was built in a far more unusual way. Instead of relying on its outer body panels as the main structure, the car used a strong central base unit, while many exterior panels were bolted on around it. This clever design meant the P6 was, in effect, hiding a protective inner shell beneath its stylish skin. The benefit was more than theoretical because it helped Rover create a car that felt solid, modern, and unusually safety-conscious for 1963. It also made panel replacement more practical after minor damage. In an era when many executive cars still followed older traditions, the P6 felt like a machine designed by people quietly thinking several years ahead. A gentleman's car with racing car rear suspension. The Rover P6 never looked like a racing car, which makes its rear suspension all the more fascinating. Rather than using a simple live axle like so many saloons of the period, Rover gave it a de Dion rear layout, a remarkable engineering choice more often associated with more specialized machinery. In plain language, it helped the rear wheels stay better controlled while separating some of the weight from the axle itself. The result was a hidden advantage you could feel from behind the wheel: better composure, more grip, and a ride that managed to be both supple and confident. This was not the loud sort of performance that shouted for attention. It was the quiet kind that made the P6 feel expensive, deliberate, and thoroughly grown up. That balance helped define its character more than any badge ever could. The Buick 5.8 that turned a quiet Rover into a sleeper. Then came the transformation that changed the Rover P6 from a clever saloon into something almost mischievous. When Rover installed the lightweight 3.5-litre 5.8, originally derived from a Buick design, the car gained a whole new personality without losing its composure. This was the same dignified shape, the same wood and leather atmosphere, but now with the smooth surge and cultured burble of 8 cylinders. Because the engine was made from aluminium, it was compact but effective, giving strong performance without turning the P6 into a heavy brute. In period, a Rover 3500 could genuinely surprise people who expected something merely respectable. That is what made it stand out. It was not a muscle car, and it was not trying to be. It was a British sleeper, elegant on the surface and quietly fast underneath. The safety interior before safety was fashionable. Step inside a Rover P6 and you begin to notice an unusual detail. It was designed to protect you in ways many 1960s cars barely considered. The dashboard was padded, the controls were shaped with care, and the cabin avoided the hard, sharp surfaces that once passed for normal in family motoring. Rover did not make the interior feel clinical or cold, though it still looked warm, tasteful, and proudly British, with the kind of atmosphere that suited a well-cut suit and a rainy motorway run. The practical gain was obvious because these features were meant to reduce injury and driver distraction. Yet the emotional meaning runs deeper. Long before safety became a sales slogan, Rover was already treating it as part of luxury itself. In the P6, comfort and caution were not opposites. They were part of the same idea. The boot-mounted spare that became a style statement. Perhaps the most charmingly odd Rover P6 feature was the spare wheel that could sit outside the boot, mounted on the lid like a continental accessory from another world. It began as a surprisingly practical solution because the P6's boot was not especially generous, and the packaging underneath limited luggage space. By moving the spare externally, Rover freed up room for actual touring bags, coats, or a weekend's shopping. But what started as practicality soon became part of the car's visual identity. With its vinyl cover and proud placement, the boot-mounted spare turned an inconvenience into a style statement. It made the P6 look slightly more adventurous, slightly more European, and somehow more self-aware. Few cars managed to transform a compromise into a signature. The Rover P6 did exactly that, and people still remember it for it. The American Rover that was stranger than the British one. When Rover sent the P6 across the Atlantic, the result was one of the most curious chapters in the car's story. The North American versions looked familiar, but they carried a collection of unusual details shaped by export demands from side marker lights and heavier federal-style fittings to equipment rarely seen on British market cars. Some cars even featured luxuries such as air conditioning, power-assisted steering, or electric windows, making them feel almost like an alternate universe Rover. In simple terms, the P6 had to learn a new language for America. The practical goal was clear: appeal to buyers who expected more convenience and more compliance with local regulations. Yet, the emotional pull lies in how strange the result became. It was still unmistakably British, but filtered through an American lens, and that made it one of the most intriguing Rover variants ever built. The Rover P6 was a car of quiet rebellion, safer than it looked, stranger than it sounded, and far more ambitious than its gentlemanly image suggested. From jet-age suspension ideas to a Buick-derived V8 and a boot-mounted spare that became an icon, it proved that British engineering could still surprise the world. Click to watch more stories about Britain's forgotten classic cars. Like, subscribe, and tell us what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.